I am here with Karen Tait, the founder of the Residence Coworking in the UK. Karen just wanted to tell me about her weekend going to see Coldplay in Ireland. You're so fun.
Did I just drop that in like
I know.
nonchalantly?
Did you
Like,
go with
yeah.
did the whole family go or?
Took my husband and I took my daughter, and my daughter took her best friend who had the treat of a lifetime. We bought the tickets over a year ago, couldn't get them in the UK. So we're like, go to Dublin. Dublin's fun.
Right.
Uh, yeah. So they were off the scale, friggin' amazing.
I mean, I bet this is so fun of you, Karen. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, yeah. I think everyone should go to a Coldplay concert. I think it's like therapy. I think it's like co-working. It's just got
Yeah.
so much love and good feel, and
Yeah.
82,000 people singing their hearts out to,
Yeah. Live concerts. I have not been to
yeah,
a live concert in a million years. It's crazy. So
yeah.
I gotta go. Do
It,
you know who's on my
I,
list? Pitbull is on my list.
I'm going to say, I don't know who they are,
No.
which is
Okay.
why I tentatively said, do you know who Coldplay is?
I totally know who Coldplay is. Yes,
Yeah.
much more, what's the word? I don't know, like legendary probably, but
Yeah.
Pitbull would be fun. Anyway, good for you. Okay,
Yeah.
Karen, so much to talk about today. We're going to dive right in.
Yeah.
And you and I have not caught up in a while, so some of this will be new.
Ages.
Me too, I know. Okay.
Yeah. You said
Um,
tea, so I brought tea.
oh, good. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm having my morning coffee,
Well,
my
it's not fresh
cappuccino.
time for me. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us tell us where in the world you're located, and then tell us your co-working story. How did you? What was the moment, and where did you start in co-working? And then we'll work our way along to where you are today.
Okay.
Going.
So I my space is in Bishop Stortford, Hertfordshire, which is probably 40 miles outside of London, if you like it, and 40 miles equidistance the other way, further north to Cambridge, which are probably, hopefully, two pretty well-known cities. So that's where we're located. So we're in a suburb of the outer regions of London. My journey started back, well, to go back even further, my career was in investment banking in the early 2000s. So I was at Credit Suisse in equity support, and then Morgan Stanley, and then Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. So I kind of worked my way around them all and left in, probably hung up my boots in about 2015 and thought, well, I will be a virtual assistant. So I will do admin for small business owners, remote. That would give me a bit more balance, less commute.
You were so you were commuting.
Yeah, I was commuting. So I
London.
commuted every day, like a wheel.
No.
Well, yeah, an hour and a half there, an hour and a half back. And I think that the points at which I had a nanny for the wraparound care for the children when they were little. So at the point she was earning more than me for
on an hourly basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you broke it down when you took
worst.
out the cost, the time, the childcare costs, And the VA thing had kind of started to be something I'd heard about. Thought, well, that's my skill set. I can do that remotely. I've got a big black book of, kind of well-established bankers who have started their own side hustle, whatever. So I started that, and I factored a lot of things into my career change, but never actually factored where I would work. I just was like, oh, I just never factored missing the office, if you like. And, because my background, as I say, investment banking, you're on floors with 2,000 to 3,000 people just on a floor.
Yeah. You were probably so looking forward to taking a break from that. Right. You did.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, what does that mean? Where are me and my laptop gonna settle in?
Yeah. And I'm like, well, I'll be at home. The children will be at school. My husband's at work, the home, so it's had be great. And like 6, maybe 12 months in, I started to get a bit isolated and a bit same day, every day, kind of say, no different from the same commute every day, but the missing piece was people and conversations and a bit of fun and a bit of socializing and getting putting something really nice on and getting to my office and good morning and how are you and all those kind of pleasantries. And I started to kind of look around me in my local area. And this is going back to when I finally started the space in its original format in 2017, to not a great deal of choice, if I'm honest. There was a Regis reasonably close by near Stansted Airport. Obviously, London.
Not your vibe. Yeah, London had lots of choice. I know London.
And I didn't want to go back to London.
Of course, you didn't want to commute an hour and a half every day to go to a co-working.
I was kind of prepared to, though. Don't get me wrong. But
yeah.
Crossed my mind briefly. And there's a couple of other local operators that are more mid-sized operations, but predominantly private office, predominantly meeting rooms. You know, co-working, if they even considered it, was just a couple of tables shoved over there. That's where our co-workers go. And then I did try that, and I wasn't really meeting anybody. It was no different from sitting at home on my own. So that vibe wasn't there. So 2017, little barn came up for rent, not far from where I lived, probably 1,000 square feet, very old, but traditional beams, floorboards, and it felt like it would provide me with somewhere to work, and it would provide a space for other people to work. And it didn't need to, I had to test the concept, right? I had to test the concept that co-working outside of London in the suburbs.
So you knew about co-working, because I'll interview a lot of people who think, even still when people, reach out, it's like they think they invented it, they've never heard of it. They had this idea and they're like, oh, it actually exists. You knew it existed. You kind of looked around and you're like,
I did. And then a little. And that came out of my background, I guess, in investment banking and the clients I dealt with, and also my clients. Some of them worked with, a couple of them worked at Fora. So when I went in to work with them, if I did, it would be in there. So
yeah.
And I just was like, why is there nothing around here? Like, why is there not
a Suburban Fora? Totally.
Yeah. I mean, there is one in Cambridge now, but in 2017, there was Regis or this, and neither were appealing to me. I didn't need a private office, didn't want to sit on my own. And as I say, I rented a small barn. The landlord was very sweet. It was, I'll often say to people, the lease was written on the back of I'm going to say fag packet. I don't know if you'll know that in the US. It's, a very loose, you agree to pay me X on Y. No end date, no start date, nada.
No one was in charge of the HVAC.
No one was in charge of when the boiler went down. No one was in charge of when the mouse came to visit. All the things that an old barn give you. But that suited me, right? Because if it had failed, if it had not flown, been popular, gone, I could say, thanks very much, Bob. We give it a go. And he'd be like, no problem, Karen.
Right?
Yeah. And 12 months in, I'm like, oh, we got a lot of people coming. When
it was all open seating, right?
All open seating.
No meeting rooms.
We did have a very cute mezzanine for 4 desks. We had 15 desks on the open floor and 1 meeting room for 10 and a small kitchen downstairs. So whilst it was small, it had pockets and it had charm and it had very British charm. And we, just up to the point of COVID, we had reached capacity. So, but that's not a great deal of, in today's world of co-working, not a great deal of.
But you had validated, there are other people besides me who want something like or like this. Yeah.
Exactly. And
you had a website. I mean, you were treating it like a real business. I mean,
yes.
It wasn't you were doing your VA business and this, but you had a website, you were marketing. I mean, you were doing all this.
Yeah, we were doing all those things. And I think that, but back in 2017, its purpose was to provide me a space to work. It wasn't a source of income for me. Didn't provide me a living. If now, as I look back now, which I thought it might give me some return over and above, a few £100 if you want. And that was on a good month, right? But it didn't need to, because I had a 9-to-5 job, Monday to Friday, gave me a space to work, gave me a space to meet people, talk about my VA business, provide service.
Yep.
And cut my teeth and hear all the reasons not to come, hear all the reasons to come, the reasons why people leave, what people want, what they don't want, what they're prepared to pay. And then I think I hooked up with, I think I made a note, I hooked up with yourself January 2021, which was at the stage of we're going to expand. And then obviously COVID closed us all down, but we were already committed to this second location. But then you could see that maybe the way of work was going to change. It sounds cliche, doesn't it, to say it, but it felt like.
Well, it's so clear in hindsight, but at the time, we didn't know anything, right?
No.
Yeah.
And it felt like we might never go back fully to the office, or the office might take on different formats or different scenarios. So we were committed. So we opened the doors to the second location, which is where I am today in Bishop Stortford, Hertfordshire, August 2021. So we've been operational for 3 years this month.
That's crazy. How is that possible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're throwing a big party. We've got a DJ. We got a
Wait, you threw a party? Wait,
you're having a party. We're throwing it.
You're throwing it. Okay.
Yeah.
So fun. Okay. I'm going to read one of your Google reviews so that we can set up how fabulous this space is and what an amazing operator Karen is. Okay. So Karen has 104 5-star Google reviews, which we'll talk about later. But I want to read this one. I used the residence conference room for a workshop recently, and the experience was fantastic. I should use my British. I can't do a British accent. My daughter can, but I cannot. Super easy to book through their app or via email, and it's easy to change the date if needed. On the day, Laura, community manager, made sure everything was ready for me and took care to make sure my laptop was connected to the screen. Tea and coffee, plates, etc. were provided, and they would have organized catering if needed. The environment is beautiful and very professional looking while being friendly and comfortable. Everyone is super friendly and welcoming too. I would recommend this co-working space to anyone needing either a desk for the day or a space for meetings and workshops. I mean, yeah. So 3 years you've been open. Tell us more about big shift. You kept the smaller space open for a little while, moved into the and I'm going to put the link in the show notes because it is beautiful. It's a beautiful build. It's beautiful surroundings. You had a vision, and it is.
I did. I had a vision. I had a strong vision, and I did have help bringing that vision to life in terms of commercial interior designer, aspects of the business that, are not my forte. Design is not my forte, but I had a vision of environments that I'd worked in investment banking that were luxurious, marble lifts and food on tap and just beautiful foyers. And, I knew what good looked like, and I didn't want mediocre. So I was prepared to invest the extra money to deliver a product that spoke to other people who were happy to align with that and weren't looking for mediocre, risky, whatever the word is. Do you know what I mean? Like they weren't looking for just a desk. They were looking for something else that's
London space in the suburbs, right?
Yeah.
You don't feel like you're settling just because you're in the suburbs and you're not going to commute. So
And then that's another barrier you've gotten over for them, that the cost of a day pass with us is cheaper than a ticket to London. So if I'm getting the same vibe in a local environment, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? And then, free parking and free coffee and cake and a monitor, like all the barriers that you could justify going to London. If you don't need to, that's the point, then hopefully we have resolved those for you. Yeah.
So you did shift into more private offices, meeting rooms. Can you talk about your mix a little bit?
Yeah. So here in this space, we're just under 5,000 square feet. We have nine private offices, 30 open desks, 1 meeting room, 1 conference room for 20, and then various pockets of the space that are given over to what I might call casual seating, like chairs to sit on, places to do a jigsaw, places to have your lunch, breakfast stools at the bar, a couple of chairs upstairs with the views of the country. So like pockets where if you just needed to get away from your desk, and we're quite lucky where we are in the bank of the countryside. So there are horses looking out of the window, cows to the left, horses to the right. green spaces, birds tweeting, beautiful flowers, like lots of uplifting, kind of mentally stimulating things. So,
Okay, so it's been a while since we caught up. You were
yeah.
working on your meeting room revenue. What's going well today? What's a good source of revenue? I'm curious about your meeting room business.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mainstay of our business obviously is the private offices. The demand is high, demand keeps coming. They don't churn as quickly, they stay longer, they stay more. All the reasons that you told me that they would, which was that it is a physical need. It's not a fancy wish, or it's just I don't really they have team members, they have belongings, they have requirements that require private offices, and it's almost like I have a big waiting list for private offices and they don't leave. So if you've asked me my product mix, which are the bits that I can turn the taps on a bit more as and when, the flexible plans, the monthly flexible plans, and the virtual office is something that we've worked on with you, or your previous mailbox challenge. So something that now I feel like I have the roadmap to deliver, because that's obviously an aspect into the business for revenue where I don't need bums on seats, because I don't have many more seats to give them. This has been a quiet period for us. I think it's probably quiet for all operators, August and December. Today already, we felt a plethora of emails like, the kids are back, get me back. The kids are gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I come in? Can I come in today? So I think, and what has gone extremely well is our monthly plans. We switched them about 12 months ago to not just be days, but they were also hours. So we've got a Flexi 5 and a Flexi 10, which is 5 days or 10 days. No carryover, recurring every month, right? Super easy, low exit point, 30 days, but gives them access to the space 24/7. And they become a member, right?
They can come in 24/7. Got it.
Absolutely. Okay. You don't get that obviously with the day pass, and the day pass is 8:30, 5:30. But what we did was we switched it to 5 days or 40 hours, or 10 days, 90 hours, each day being 8 hours. And what it attracted was the working parent and the person who worked internationally, early morning, late evenings. They had a side hustle. They were doing blogging. That all reasons why they weren't working standard hours. And what it did was it allowed them access to the space without me compromising on security, because they were a member of the space and they could use those hours in whatever format they wanted. So maybe you've dropped your children at school, you're at your desk by 9, you're leaving again at 2:30, you might come back in the evenings. All of that was possible with the plan. And the idea was that would increase monthly revenue that I could account for, because I can't account for day passes.
Because meaning you can't predict that.
I can't. Yeah, that's the right word. I can't predict, and it's not that consistent. We all know. I think that co-working has to become a habit, and I think that the day pass person comes out of forced need, unless they come and they absolutely love it. That's why it's priced a bit higher, right?
Yeah.
But we do you call them in the US a punch card. Yep. Here I call it a loyalty card. So every time you come for a day pass, you get a stamp. 5 day passes, you get a free one. Everyone loves something free.
Yeah, I mean, I love this. I think I remember you thinking about doing this and you're like, what about the hours? And I love you're so willing to experiment, because so you've given people that mental option, okay, I'm good thinking about it in terms of days or hours. And you've said, look, you get 24/7 access. I'm just going to give that to you. And I feel like we used to be like, nope, you can't have, and you still have to think about how you segment, your access. But if that's the demand that's coming in and that's what they value, okay, fine, let's do it.
Yeah. And I didn't want to lose that demand that I was hearing, people saying well, I have to go to London in the morning, so I'd love to come to the space in the afternoon, but I don't really want to use a whole day of my credits. So
right.
Yeah. Or the other
into human psychology. It's like, humans are so odd.
Yeah. Some
Yep.
people don't care, and some people like, well, no, I don't really want to use 8 hours because I'm only here for
Yeah.
4. And I kind of get that. There's should hopefully be enough flexibility in the operation of the space that we can afford that. But that comes with membership, not just
Totally. Yeah. Commitment.
people just coming in for an hour.
Right. You're
Like,
not right. Or 4 hours. No, you cannot buy 4 hours at a time, but
no,
you can commit to
yeah,
getting hourly package monthly. Yeah. I love
we're
it.
exclusive. It's just that I don't want to dilute the offering by just offering an hour or 2 hours here and there. Look, we've made exceptions where people are traveling through, and there's always that flexibility with when the owner's on site to be able to say, like, someone might just ask for a dedicated desk for a month because the builders are in. Why would I say no? It's possible. It's just that it's not normally our model, but we can do that and we will do that. So, and there are always circumstances that drive people out of their homes, not just for their mental health, but for their actual getting the job done, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. How about meeting room demand? How is that? Has that picked up?
Well, I didn't increase the price, like you said. No, I did make a differentiator actually between the meeting space and the conference room. I did actually up the price. I'm kind of half joking there. What I've decided is that we have 2 meeting spaces. So our biggest conference room is probably 350 square feet. So we're going to subdivide it so that it can be 1 big conference room or 2 smaller meeting rooms. And because the waitlist list was so long for private offices, this meeting room will become a private office. So the members don't feel like they're losing a resource.
Yep.
My member who's getting an in to the door is happy. It's also freeing up one of my smaller offices because they're moving up into a 4-person, which every little helps, right? To my bottom line, to not to have to sell a lot of meeting room time that can be better utilized as a private office.
Yep. I love it. Okay. And so is it the office that you're sitting in now?
But this one's going to become the private office, and then the room next door, and it will be subdivided, professionally with a retractable door, acoustically sound. It'll both have its HVACs on either side, both have technology on either side. So if, say, like, we host a lot of networking groups, Women in Business, The Rising Tide, Six for Good Females, predominantly, large groups of people. I don't want to lose that because that's also footfall through the space where people come and, oh gosh, co-working, what's co-working? I can work here. I'm a solo trader. I'm a freelancer. I'm here networking. So then we can retract the doors, have it as a big space. But the majority of the people that come for meetings sit between 6 and 8 people. It seems to be the norm. So yeah.
Better utilized. Nope. I love it.
Yeah.
Kind of saying, what do we have? What do people want more of? Let's do that. Okay. So you have a beautiful Zoom background. Can we take a little detour and can you tell us about your rental art program?
Yeah. So I think that the interior was really important to me, that it was aligned with the brand, but also I felt like the artwork could add an element of something that could be very interchangeable depending on the seasonal, summer, winter, whatever. It's a nice talking point. It is one of our members. So Chris White from
wow,
Art Rotate, who I've known since I opened 2017, does art rental in predominantly London, predominantly high-end business. And, and I was like, well, we could do that, right? And so each piece was chose by our interior designer, Helen, who designed the interiors, and she color matched each piece of artwork with the furniture to create the mood. And, I think behind me is a great example of, we've got 4 of these throughout the space. 2 are blue, and there's another yellow. And there's nothing worse than a blank wall with...
Especially when I'm looking at you on Zoom. When you logged in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is fabulous. It's a real background and it's beautiful. And people are on Zoom, right? You want them to have a nice background. So does that stay up? Does the private office get that, or do you have to move it out?
Oh, that is I hadn't thought about that. That's an upsell right there, Jamie.
I know you might, right? You could sell that as a package.
I think if Tammy's listening, I'll be asking her. So yeah.
No, I love that. I mean, you have me thinking about like your positioning. You're in the suburbs, but you said, well, I'm not going to be mediocre. I'm going to be, high end, beautiful space. And I think, and I want to talk about the cake. Well, tell us about the cake.
Yeah. So the
It's
cake,
kind of foreign to the US folks. Probably all the British folks are like, yeah, of course.
I think our most rated word on our reviews is cake. And the cake came about, the cake scenario and the coffee scenario came around in my head. So I feel like sometimes my biggest competitor is the coffee shop, which was where I used to hang out, right? So when I didn't find what I needed, I thought, well, I'll coffee shop hop, and it serves a purpose, and it can become expensive, right? If you're there all day, and they probably don't want you there all day, and and it's not conducive to your best work if you can't find a socket or it's noisy or all those things. So I thought, well, if we have all-inclusive pricing, that I'm not like, well, the desk is 20, and if you want a coffee, that's £2, and if you want a slice of cake, that's £2. A bit like my EasyJet flight over the weekend to Ireland, right? If you
Yes. My daughter still laughs about that. We took one last fall, and she uses that analogy also.
do you really want to bring a bag on? Like, oh, well, I'm just going empty-handed for 4 days. Of course I need a bag. Anyway, so I didn't want people to have to pay. I didn't want them to not have a cup of coffee because they couldn't afford it, or was suddenly becoming maybe it's my northern hospitality. I'm from the north of England. Everything is done over a cup of tea. Tea is the most, yeah. We don't, up north, we don't have people standing on our doorsteps talking. In the house, cup of tea, slice of cake. So it feels like hospitality. It's welcoming, it's feeding, and then it became a talking point, like what's coming today. And people will be on Zoom calls at 9 a.m. on a Monday doing the water cooler moment, set the week up for success, all the things. And the people on the Zoom calls all over the world will be going, what cake is it today? They'd be like, it's Malteser, or it's Biscotti, or my favorite. Oh, and I don't like that one. We had that one, don't like that one. And we went a whole 18 months without having the same cake.
Wow.
but also the idea was also that the space would use local suppliers. That was also important to me. So the cake is made by the lovely Esther, local cake maker. Our coffee comes from a local roaster in Saffron Walden. As I say, the artwork, we used a local interior designer. We worked with a local accountant. The idea is the space is not just somewhere that is commercially successful. It almost feels like it's that money that is in local communities being moved around and is not being spent in London or Manchester or on Amazon, giving it to Jeff, lovely Jeff. It's being given to the nice guy who set up a roasting coffee business, who needs his foot in the door. I was currently giving it to Tesco's, which is obviously a big UK food chain in the UK. Why would I not? He price matched. And then we upped the price as we needed more. So it's like giving back.
Yeah. But all adding to the experience. And I think this was, intentional for you and what you wanted, but also it's kind of aligning with what people want. I mean, you live in a nice suburb outside of London where people have nice home offices, right? And so I was talking to Kevin Whelan about this recently. He was on our other podcast and talking about like how he advises newer brands to think about their positioning. It's really hard to be right down the middle.
Yeah.
So you either have to like you started with like the barn and very approachable, inexpensive memberships, but very charming. And then you went for we're going to create something really beautiful and unique that is as nice or better than what people have at home, which is pretty nice. And so you've got the beautiful artwork, you're very well styled, professional designer, the cake. I mean, it's like a step up from what you would have at home or what you would ever create on your own in a suburban area, which is so critical because you probably have people walk in who are just like, this is it.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, like in COVID, everybody suddenly had to create, if they had the space, a really nice home office. So to entice them out of there, it had to deliver more than you could get. And the other aspects that we could add on top of the nice home office was equal to have a nice styled office, but also refreshments,
The hospitality, which is
the
so
heating.
natural to you. And I hear you talk about it. You're like, well, of course, this is what we do. And it happens to be what people want, especially today.
Yeah. And I mean, and when we saw the gas and electric prices go through the roof across the world, don't have your heating on at home. Come in. Our heating's on, our air conditioning's on. So those little subtle things that we're delivering, which we have to deliver anyway to keep the lights on, is saying, we're good value for money. We're not going to try and upsell you at every point, because when we first opened in Bishop Stortford, I was mindful we could charge for printing, we could charge for scanning, we could charge for the coffee, we could, there were lots of layers where we could have increased margin, but I just didn't sit with me. It just was like, if I was that user, I might think twice about the second cup of coffee, and it would equally, then I could easily say, well, I could go to Costa's then and have the coffee and pay for the coffee. I'm paying for the coffee with you. I wanted again to remove the next barrier to excuses not to use the residence. Yeah, if that makes sense.
It would completely make sense. I think it's just like the hours calculation, right? It's like the things that get in people's way can be really funny. And it's like, right, you just like, I don't want them to even be thinking about it. Like, oh, I have to pay for my second cup of coffee here. And that becomes like a little nagging, like just remove all of that. No, I think it's really smart. So you're in a suburban location. How do most of your members find you?
I think word of mouth, our socials, Google My Business, because when you do co-working in Bishop Stortford, co-working Hertfordshire, whatever that search term might be, if you are aware, obviously, what co-working is, we come up quite nicely.
When your 104 Google reviews show up.
It's
a pretty impressive number, especially because why do you tell me about the, putting effort into that? Because you do come up first. You could get a little lazy about that. How do you get to 104?
We were very intentional, or I was, or now Laura is from the start, in that I know that many of us will choose a holiday, choose a car, choose something and validate it externally by someone else. And I think that validation out of the customer's mouth carries a lot of weight over my mouth. I can tell you I've got all the vibe going on here. I can tell you I've got all the community and all the latest pop songs and the best artwork in the world. And if I rock up as a user and it is soulless and lacking in vibe and where are all these people you promised me, I'm just going to feel you've been disingenuous. And that's for me where the reviews felt like they could be really a good driver to validate what we're saying, because I'm always going to be biased. And equally, people were just so keen to leave reviews, felt like they really wanted to tell everybody about this amazing co-working space they found in their local community, and that they needed other people to come and they needed other people to experience it, not just the productivity, but the transformations in their business and how their business has thrived by using, if not this co-working space, any co-working space. And I think people have been really, really generous. We've never bribed anybody. We've never offered money. We all absolutely know it's just been, people feel like, oh, definitely your review's been so amazing. And there are times when we'll ask. I think 2 or 3 great reviews every month means that it's kept fresh. I do try and update the Google My Business on a consistent basis, new offers, new pictures, new interactions.
I think it pays to do that. We encourage that through our community manager program and provide templates and all those things. But we still see people who don't do it. I
Yeah.
also think it's a great defense mechanism because
Yeah.
you may get competitors, right?
Yeah.
And then when that search happens, like, oh, 100 plus
Yeah.
five-star reviews. So, yes, they'll probably tour the other location, but it's
Yeah.
also, and related to that, you also have invested over time in your website and
Yeah.
kind of the content, usability, SEO. Can you
Yeah.
just talk a little bit about why that was important to you?
Well, weirdly enough, Jamie, since we last spoke, I'm doing a website rebrand. Not the brand itself, but the overhaul of the website. I felt like the first iteration we had done was done during the build out phase of the actual space. And I didn't give it enough time to really reflect our personality, what happens here. It felt it just needed to be elevated. And the reason for that is expansion. And as you've just said about, you can get lazy with your list, your reviews. Our website now needs to work a lot harder as we look to expand because we're well known in this local area. And if we move into other areas, our website is going to have to bring us traffic. And everything needs to be aligned, the new Google Analytics with my Facebook, with my all the platforms. And it also, I want the content to be aligned with the brand, the Donald Miller and the brand story and the positioning and the guide and the customer and the problem and the solution and all the things. And we'll create a very bespoke framework for that. And, that should launch hopefully in the next month. Again, one of the web developers in the building, the content writers in the building. So we're using in-house resources.
And they really get you. I mean, it's not everybody has that or should use the folks in the building. I've seen that not go well.
Yeah.
It's beautiful when you can do that. And they understand, they really deeply understand your brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Camilla, my content writer, I'd worked with for 7 years, so that was a no-brainer. But more recent addition, Kelly's a web developer, and I loved what she did, and I knew that if we were going to elevate and change, then she was the person to do it. And like you say, like we've had lots of meetings, we're all on the same page, and we trialed it with a virtual office landing page as part of your challenge, and it was just beautiful.
Oh, wait, is that on your site now? No,
it's not there. Sorry.
Okay, you have to tell me when everything's
to make it live.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my procrastination, but it just felt like a reflection of who we are. Fun, friendly. Yeah.
I love that. And it's so much work to update a website. Okay, so talk about your expansion plans. What are you working on?
Well, I think if we go back 2 years, conversations were hard to have. I didn't even get past the brokers in the UK, flex operator. No, our landlord doesn't want to speak to you. Like and then I felt like everything I've learned over the last 7 years is that like we needed to do a traditional lease model on this building to prove that our concept works, that our model works, that we know our model and our revenues and what we need to do to break even, et cetera, et cetera. So to do a very traditional lease, 7-year, 5-year exit is what we needed to do. And that has opened the doors now to conversations with other landlords who have got vacant buildings or are building buildings or building developments. And it's been a bit like buses recently. They're all just opportunities have just come our way, and we're deep into conversations with 2, but we've been very cautious. I don't want to, I think it's very easy to get overexcited that because you filled a space, in this space in Bishop Stortford, we had a runway of 18 months to get to 90% capacity, and we did it in 8 months of opening. So it's easy to get carried away and go, we could do that on the next building, but everything. And we have looked at a lot of potential sites that have just not ticked enough boxes, and have been very clear about what I won't compromise on. And one of them is location. One of them is the look in terms of the structure itself. I didn't want
You have a high bar because I mean, your building is beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
And I didn't want a soulless office block in the middle of a commercial park. And parking is something I won't compromise on. Not having it, I think, is a big barrier for people to overcome. Because if they're thinking day passes and then parking on top, and then the aggro of parking and finding spots for all of those things. So we've been very cautious and very choosy. We've turned down a couple of deals, but that's for the right reasons, because we've ran the models, ran the pro formas, and you can pretend something. As you always say, Jamie, the one thing you can't fix is the deal that you do, even before you open the doors. Yes, the interior, the furniture to some extent, some walls perhaps, fixable, but deal structures and profitability on the actual space that you're going to lease, if you haven't got that right, then super difficult. Super difficult, because you don't have enough floor plate to sell enough product to pay the bills.
Karen, you could teach now. You've got it. I love it.
When I learned from the best, right? I genuinely did. It's an absolute honor to be on your podcast, because you were the first person I came across when I started to think about co-working, and I didn't quite find a voice in the UK at the time and I listened and I absorbed and I learned and I read some more and I attended conferences at Juicy, and I built some relationships, and I asked them questions that I was too afraid to ask in public, because it felt like I should know. But why would I know some of the things that I've learned?
100%.
Yeah. And now I can pass those things on to other people. And
you know it for yourself too, right?
Yeah.
Like, you hearing it is one thing and kind of believing it, but I just hear you talking like, oh, she really, like, she knows it.
Yeah.
Through experience and through the numbers, and you've done all the things, marketing, you've hired a community manager, you've run a bunch of pro formas and thought about deal. Yeah, you really, really know it. Are you going to Juicy in October?
I think I probably will. I went to Juicy in Manchester.
And that was just recent.
Like 3 months ago. So I was again honored to ask to be on a panel. So on what makes, local co-working special with other speakers. And I could talk about it all day, because it's not a job, it's a passion. So, and of course it does earn me a living, but you don't feel like you're doing a day's work when you love it.
Yeah, there must be days. I have days.
Well,
I have days where I'm like, wow,
there are days.
It's hard. And then I wake up the next day and I feel the same way. I think it's so amazing to be able to do this work and be in an industry, that you love and that adds so much meaning to people. I mean, your Google reviews, I just briefly want to touch on your LinkedIn strategy. You post on LinkedIn, and you had a member recently, like an ode to Karen and the Residence.
Yes.
So amazing.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. Because I remember you were like, how do you know about, social and LinkedIn? Can you just talk about kind of your commitment to spending time there? And
so I tend to use Instagram and Facebook as, some informative posts, stories, some fun behind the scenes, which dog, which Kate, which person, which dogs always features super high. People always tag us with their dogs and tag us with eating their cake. And so the stories are a lot of fun, but I use LinkedIn to build my own authority in this co-working industry. So I've pivoted away from selling on LinkedIn in terms of like my own thoughts around the industry and what I've experienced, and commenting on other people's stuff, reading other people's stuff, sharing other people's stuff. So to try and, which has only come about by the hire of Laura, moving me out of operations into the next phase of strategic growth and using my voice to amplify local co-working, of which there's still not enough of. I hear it all the time. I wish there was one in Norwich, and I wish there was one here, and I wish there was one there. And I want to to maybe try and amplify that it is possible for, if you're sitting, it is possible to bootstrap it, which we have done. You know, there's no investors here. We're not funded. It's not easy. I'm not going to lie and say everyone should do it. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it's equally possible to do it with as long as you stay true and authentic to yourself, and you are who you say you are, and you will do what you say you will do. And that's, I think one of the biggest, I think relationships in your business, and that includes my business and your business, Jamie, and any relationships are the backbone of everything that happens in the world. If you can listen and ask questions and be inspired, and I try to use those relationships on LinkedIn to be a force for good. There's a lot of good in the world. We don't often shout about the good things that go on in the world, and there's a lot of, it's easy to get sucked into doom and gloom, and that goes especially for the solopreneur and the small business owner, who will probably spend a lot of time in their own head telling themselves they can't do it, they're not capable, they don't have the know-how. And you come in here and you inject yourself, not physically, obviously, with a little bit of positivity. You could walk in here and some tea and some
everything's
cake.
better.
Everything's better. You could come in here, couldn't you? You've lost your major client. What are we going to do? And I've seen it happen time and time again. And we've seen people in the space who have got funded after 5 years of trying, and they just want to bounce in here and celebrate. And we want to pick you up when you're down, celebrate when you're high, go on the journey with you, because it is a journey. And we're here for all of it. Tears, support. We have a very lively WhatsApp group, which radiates between banter, Mickey taking, as we call it in the UK, job opportunities, collaborations, cries for help. And that's what co-working can do for you as a person, as an individual. And I think that I obviously have children that are about to enter the world of work. And I think that we're all suffering from elements of loneliness and isolation. And I'm not sure that fully remote working is conducive to good mental health, of which also we have a crisis. So anything that can be done to keep people's spirits high, for me, is a driving force. And I did actually say that at the 2C conference that money was not my motivator, of which there were sharp intakes of breath from the audience.
Well, I would like to say on behalf of the entire co-working industry, if money was our real true motivator, right, we'd all be in investment banking, not co-working.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I get my energy levels from seeing people use the space exactly how I intended. I get my energy from people using the space and talking about the space and posting on LinkedIn without asking them to reiterate what they feel is fantastic. And I can't buy that. You can't buy that's authenticity in play. But of course, we have to keep the lights on. And so we do have to keep our eye on the numbers and the data, and tweak when needed, where, parts of this building are not utilized, like the small meeting room, or we used to have a high bench. No one ever sat at it. It was pretty.
We're talking about the bench, I know.
Yeah. The bench is now in storage.
Yeah, right. Maybe for the next location.
Well, yeah.
Okay, Karen, we are out of time. We might have to do a part 2 because
I'd love to.
So many more things I need updates on. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.